Welcome back. I wanted to do a quick update today. So we've done a lot of work on the heavy duty supercar design. So if you didn't watch through the first video on the channel all the way, you probably didn't get to the end where I start showing off some of my more complete designs and talking a little bit more about the actual panel design and figuring out how the metal or the fiberglass is going to flow when you get to shaping it or laying it. And for some people that may be watching that are a little bit more versed in car design, you'll definitely see that this design is still a bit wobbly. The reason why it's a bit wobbly is because to make some of the design elements that I wanted to make, I had to use a lot of triangles. You see there's triangles all throughout the rear quarters, the fenders, and even in these side scoops here. So triangles are a necessary evil sometimes, but when it comes to shaping a body design, they can be a bit of a nightmare. So some design elements you might not have understood so far in this video if you didn't watch through the whole video last time. This car is much bigger than it looks like it should be. If you look back here, this basic roughed out model of a motor here is actually scaled to the exact outside dimensions of the motor I have sitting outside in my potential donor vehicle. A GMC 2500 HD with an 8.1 liter V8 engine and a 5-speed Allison 1000 transmission. It's got pretty beefy axles. The axle here is actually scaled to the truck. The front suspension I've actually had to go in and design my own unequal length double wishbone suspension here because the suspension from the truck just will not work at this height. In the back we can get away with it because the mounting points are still going to be about in the same place, even though we're going to be talking about a very different vehicle geometry sitting on it. So that's going to save a lot of engineering in the back, but in the front, I've really had to kind of start getting into the actual geometry of this, how the strength of this pillar is going to work, how I'm going to actually mount my shocks. So shocks, I'm actually thinking about doing more of an inbound cantilever, more in this region. That's going to allow me to keep more of the weight towards the center of the vehicle. And by doing so, I hopefully will have very good weight distribution on this very, very big car. You'll notice these are good sized seats. They are sitting quite a ways apart. This is a massive vehicle. I have thought about potentially even adding a third seat. Not really sure about that yet. It would require a full rework of my center console, which albeit is very basic right now. But kind of one of the coolest elements I think of this design is the louvers that I spent quite a lot of time shaping and creating. This design is basically meant to give maximum driver viewing angles. So you can really see out of this back window, even though it's got these menacing looking total coverage louvers from the outside. Very interesting feature, I thought, that I created there. Now, you'll see one tool that I use a lot with my designs is mirroring. I prefer to make one side and then to mirror that. And that kind of, I would imagine, is kind of how I'm going to get into it when I get into metal shaping too. I've never done any metal shaping before. I'm really excited to give it a try, potentially with a later iteration of this design. You know, this is just kind of a bare beginning for me for what I want this design to come out to be. I'm still not 100% comfortable with the rear quarters. I think there needs to be more going on in the rear quarters. They seem bland and chunky to me. And that's kind of a side effect of, you know, the car being as big as it is. But you really, like, this is a great way to get the scale of the vehicle. The thing has a regular 2-inch receiver hitch on it that just looks kind of puny here. Then you notice it also has the 5th wheel hitch. And even the 5th wheel hitch, you know, it doesn't look entirely out of place because it's on such a large vehicle. Either that or it looks small to you because you're still not seeing the scale of this car. This thing is massive. It is absolutely huge. This is a land yacht of old, shaped like a supercar. Now, the reason for that comes back to the fact that I love combining technologies and using as much technology as is possible in the design. So when it comes to serviceability, this car is going to be number one because this car is going to have a pneumatic system in it to rival literally any. I don't even know. I don't think there's a comparison for it. So, like, I want to have some really cool features. I want to have a built-in air jack. So, basically, you get a flat tire on the side of the road. Okay. Normally, you get out, you get your jack out of your trunk. It's this dinky little scissor lift jack that you got to wind up with the tire iron. It's a crazy pain in the butt. And it takes you forever to do it. You bust your knuckles on the pavement 3 and 4 times. If it's raining out, you're soaked. You are not having fun. So I want to have an air jack to where the air compressor, on command, you hit a little switch inside the cabin. And I do like switches. I will have a lot of toggle switches in whatever final build comes of this. There will be a massive amount of toggle switches, most of them cleverly hidden, some of them clearly visible. It'll be, you know, stylishly done. And so this lift system, which I actually plan on drafting out on Wednesday, so that'll probably actually be in a video tomorrow. I might actually upload a short video tomorrow about making the air jack. It's going to be a pretty simple design. It's going to rest on technology we've been using for a very long time, and that's inflatable airbags, the same kind that have been used in suspensions, quick lifts, motorcycle lifts, all kinds of different stuff for a very long time. And these are basically just a rubber ball that when you pump air into it at a very high pressure, it elongates, it gets taller, it lifts up. So you have a couple of these stacked, you can actually get a decent amount of lift travel out of them. You know, you can get anywhere from, 10 to 16 inches with some of the commercial models available on the market today. With just a little bit of customizing and a little creative thinking. I've designed one that will go up to 24 inches. I do need to put it into the digital 3D shape, but that'll be coming very soon. Look out for that video tomorrow, potentially. Then you've got the other features that the pneumatic system is going to run. So, same situation, you are stranded on the side of the road. You jack your car up by pushing the little switch inside the cabin. In a normal car, you get out and you take that tire iron and bust those lug nuts off, one at a time, slowly. You might get them back on tight enough when the time comes. It's raining, you're soaked, you're having a bad time. In this car, you get out, you get your impact wrench, and you take your impact wrench and zip those lug nuts off in a jiffy. Pop that new tire on. Zip, 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 zip. Pop them lug nuts back on. You get back in your car and go on your merry way. I forgot to mention the spare tire is going to be right here. Right in this region. You're going to have your spare tire behind a door. So it'll literally just come out for you to grab it. Now, if that's not perfection, I don't know what is. Now, that's not even the end of it. So the pneumatic system will also run a lot of control surfaces on the car. I mentioned about the trapdoor for the spare tire on the other side. On this side, there will be a similar trapdoor. That trapdoor is going to have your toolkit in it with your impact gun. It's also going to have an air ratchet, an air hammer, and a simple air nozzle for filling Schrader valves, the same kind of valve every car's had on its valve stems for a very long time. So you're going to be able to essentially service any part of this car on the run because it can lift itself up all four corners, mind you, all four corners up off of the ground, and you can get to the tires. And if you can get to the tires with the clamshell open, you have enough room to get at, access, and service any part of this vehicle, front or back. Easy as pie, very simple. This car can be serviced on the ground with no tools other than the ones that are built into it, right? That, I think, is supreme. And I think it's just simply where the technology should have led us by now, right? I mean, shouldn't your car be 100% self-sustaining and serviceable? I think so. Another great feature that I want this car to have. And granted, this is all going to be built with simple electronics purchased off the shelf with actual parts that you can buy at just about any parts store in the world. The only thing that's going to really be one of a kind custom, can't get it anywhere, is going to be the body and the finish work on the interior. The finish work on the interior and the body are going to be 100% bespoke. I'm going to be making the body myself. The interior is going to be made by a friend of mine who is a carpenter and a cabinet maker, who has actually been out of the trade for a very long time. He got out of the trade because he wasn't able to express his creativity in the way that he wanted. With this, I told him, what I wanted, and he said, that's what I want to make. I kind of want this thing to be finished on the inside as much as it looks just kind of like a Spartan, semi-modern interior with display screens there. That's just kind of a filler to give me an idea while I'm spinning around it and looking at the body and looking at the scale of things. I can see the steering wheel, I can see that screen, and I can kind of keep in mind the scale of what I'm building, because it's hard even for me sometimes, because it is a supercar body style, a very slick mid-engine raked windshield body style of vehicle. And it's easy to forget. You look at this, if I go to object selection and I select this wheel and we just go to scale it real quick and then go back, oh yeah, look at that. That is a 24-inch rim. This is not a small wheel. This is a very large wheel, and this is a very large car. Very large indeed. In fact, these tires, look at that. It's sitting on 30s, okay? It's sitting on 30s. So that's very, very much a large wheel. It has a 58.84 inch roofline. That roofline sits 58.84 inches off of the ground. That's almost 5 feet. This is a sports car that stands to your shoulder, almost. It's very, very big. The rear end I'm still not in love with. These lights kind of feel a little too Camaro-y for me. I haven't really figured out making rounded shapes that I can workably mold and maneuver, but I really want a more rounded shape in these tail lights. I feel kind of the same way about my headlights, that I want more of a rounded shape on them. I'm thinking actually kind of maybe potentially even making these faces here part of the light, or these faces here part of the light. Just something to give it more shape, more body, and really just to be more congruous with the rest of the car. I feel like they kind of stand out a little bit too much now, as the whole front end having sort of a Pontiac feel to it, which, granted, I love Pontiac. It's a brand that's had a profound impact on my life, but I didn't want this to look like a Pontiac. I don't want people going down the road past it saying, "Whoa, I never knew Pontiac made something like that." No, I want them to say, "What the hell is that? I have never seen anything quite like it." And they never will, before or after, granted. I mean, we're talking about a heavy-duty supercar. And the intention is to make it a supercar. I've sent emails out to a company called Raylar Engineering, who does a lot of tuning on these 8.1s. I've sent an email out to a guy who does really great bespoke car bodies, about potentially, if he wanted to contribute to my build, I would absolutely welcome him in whatever advice or help or anything that he had to offer. I've been watching a lot of Rungy Cars on YouTube. He's a really great guy, and he's been making one-of-a-kind cars here in the United States for quite some time. Really does a fantastic job explaining how he's shaping the metal, why the metal is moving the way it's moving, and making it all make sense for the novice, because I always thought that metal shaping was really kind of a lost art, and that it wasn't as applicable in modern design. But as it turns out, you can still do some of the most beautiful work, with an English wheel, a hammer, and a little bit of ingenuity. And you'll see them just kind of moving points, just a teeny little bit at a time, and then looking at the way the light moves over the car. So what I'm trying to do here is, you'll see there's some wobbles still in the center line here, where that curvature just isn't quite perfect yet. It doesn't quite have that sweet spot where it just gleams exactly how I want it to, right? And yes, laugh at me all you want, that scoop is 100% inspired by the Porsche Carrera GT. Absolutely love that car. I kind of wanted my diffuser back here to look a little bit jagged, a little bit frightening. So it does kind of negate a little bit of the purpose of a diffuser, in that it creates a little bit more drag, and the idea is to create very smooth air channels to reduce drag. Those smooth air channels help draw the air out from under the car straight, and by doing so, they make the air want to flow under the car faster, I guess, so that there's a lower pressure under the car, better downforce, all of that. Now, in the front, you want kind of opposite action. We want to try and send the air up. So you'll notice the bumper has a very deep splitter actually built into it. Instead of having a separate splitter, the bumper just widens out of the front and comes down very low, directly onto what I actually had for a floor plan for the body, which was a base skeleton that I actually use for a lot of my designs when I first start on them. If you didn't watch the video through to the end last time, I'll actually show you kind of some of my file collection now. My file collection in here, yes, save. My file collection in here just is mostly a storage of parts, and this helps me to be able to start a design, and if I don't like the direction it's going in, I can drop it without having 10 hours invested before I realize I don't like the direction I'm going in. And the reason why you want to have those parts is because if you just make something from scratch, I made this car from scratch. I absolutely love the floor plan that I made. The floor plan became almost a full-on floor pan. And that is awesome because that would be a fantastic part to have all on its own. But it's on this body design. I didn't like the direction the body design was going, so I abandoned it. But I also had a lot of time invested in it. Okay? So with that, I've got so much time invested here, and you can see this is an earlier version of my tire file too, which is interesting. I didn't realize that I had that in here. I was going for a rally car here, and I just feel like I missed the mark. It looks like bubbles. It looks like just oh so many bubbles. And you see what I mean now about, having a difficulty learning to make round shapes in this design software. This design software, by the way, is actually a free app. You can download it on the App Store today. It's called 3D Modeling, Sculpt, and Draw. It's an early access app, so the app is still under development. The devs seem to be coming out with new tools pretty rapidly. I do love the fact that they've got a lot of different tools here. For instance, if I go to mirror something and then it's not giving me a tutorial pop-up now. So that's interesting because usually whenever you do something, there's a pop-up at the top center of the screen showing you a tutorial on how to use that tool. It's been massively helpful. A lot of this stuff does translate from any 3D modeling or any CAD software you've done before. You've got all of your basic shapes that you're always using to create things. Cubes, spheres, planes, cylinders, cones, pipes, torus, and pyramids. The torus is a donut shape, if you've never heard that term before. First time I heard of a torus was when I was working in SolidWorks. SolidWorks is a great software, fantastic. Definitely designed more for the engineering side of things, for, say designing frames or anything that needs to be kind of structurally tested. It does have some great structural testing elements in it. I kind of wish I had those in a package more like this so that I could play around more with shapes and then have the app kind of test things. see how crumple zones are going to work, see how different members of my frames will react to impact from different angles, so that I can really plan for safety in my designs as I'm going through and trying to sculpt the bodies, because a big part of the reason why cars look more engineered than designed most of the time is because they have to be. The designers and the engineers aren't communicating very well, and at the end of the day, if the designers don't want to communicate with the engineers are going to design the car. So that's how that happens. Now, when I first got the app, I made this design. This was actually the original design that I wanted to go with for the heavy-duty supercar. The dimensions on this model are actually incredibly tiny, which is almost comical how tiny they are. And I didn't even realize it until I was actually a little bit more familiar with the app. And I realized I had actually been working in millimeter scale. And once I realized that, I just felt so silly. Because I had been doing it for about 2 days, and I was like, wait a second, that says millimeters over here in the dimensioning box. Dimensioning box on this app is actually really cool. Absolutely love it. Whenever you're modifying a dimension, it basically allows you to set the particular dimension that you're modifying to a particular point. So like I could take and I could modify the position on this. See, I'm moving it back and forth, and I can make sure it's on 0. Okay. So now I've been modifying that, so it's going to make me modify that again. And, oh, that's not set to 0, but is that set to 0? Let's make sure that is. Boom. And now I've made that line that much more straight, that much more directly down the middle. That's at 0. That's at 0. All right. Looks like we're at 0 now. So the reason why you've still got some overlap is because, again, this is a mirrored design. So if we take, just double check here. Yeah, it says it's at 0. Okay, well, we're going to select that object and boom, mirror it to the other side. And we've got the full body again, right? So that's how you can make sure that every little change you do on one side happens to the other side, is by repeatedly mirroring, deleting, mirroring, deleting, mirroring, deleting, mirroring, deleting, and trying to change one side. I generally try and only change one side of a car at a time. So like if I'm working on the driver's side, I'm going to work on just the driver's side, and I'm going to even delete the whole passenger side while I'm making a lot of changes, so that I don't forget and have a lot of changes on both sides and have to lose one or the other. Not being able to keep some changes that I like from one and some that I like from the other. I really loved the front end design I came up with on this car. These scoops in the hood I think are great. I do think that the front end is very much too much Corvette-like in the way that those kind of fangs come down into that front splitter area. And the rear vents on this one were a little bit comically large, a little bit squarish, and I never could quite get this fender to come in right. This area, it just didn't want to connect for me. The rear end, yeah, we don't even need to talk about that. Love the spoiler. Love the spoiler. Do love that. I think that is actually a really cool spoiler design, but just wasn't right. None of it was right. this area came out really nicely. Up here at the top of my rear quarters, I thought that this section actually had a very good look to it. But overall, this design got scrapped for two reasons. One, it got scrapped because I hated the rear end and where the front fender comes into the body side. The second reason that I've kind of scrapped this design is I didn't account for the sheer size of my motor. And even if I scale this thing up, which actually, you know what? We could do that in the next video. I'll scale this up and we'll take a look at what it looks like when it's full size. It's just not going to translate well, even the bigger it gets. This video is getting long again. I kind of set out to make this video shorter, just a quick update on where some of the designs were. If you've stuck around for this whole half hour, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you want to see more of my designs as they evolve and get better and better. In this particular app, I'll likely be posting some ads in different mediums in the future, using actual materials, sculpting panels from steel and fiberglass to actually start building some of these cars. We are definitely going to build cars on this channel in the future. It might start off with some very interesting, cheap kind of patch together builds, but we are going to work towards getting to a really professional level and building some world-class cars that, will sell for fantastic amounts of money, hopefully. Again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for coming around, and we hope to see you again. This is Down East Beast signing off.